Since the launch of saberduelgaming, there have been many ups and a few downs, but one thing that has been a consistent throughout has been my retro reviews. Now recently I hit the number 50, that magical number, and I decided to go back through these retro reviews and find out what were the top 10 games I ever reviewed. Now, full disclosure, a lot of these have the same scores, so out of the ones that have got the same scores, I've allowed myself to put them in whatever order I want, but even if I feel the scores are a little bit off looking back, I can't change them. So, with that in mind, we're going to have a little look through and see out of those 50 games, what are the top 10 looking back. Hello there, welcome to saberduelgaming, where we always take the high ground, and this is our top 10 rated retro reviews so far as we celebrate 50 retro reviews. Now, before we get started, we've got a few honourable mentions, each of these tied with number 10 and a couple of others, so they had to get thrown in here. First of all is Star Fox on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System with 8.5 out of 10, and this game certainly still deserves that score. The original Star Fox game was something so special. Even on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System was a fantastic console, this was light years ahead. Injustice Gods Among Us on the PS4, also 8.5 out of 10. The fact that this is a really good one-on-one combat game, very similar in design and style to Mortal Kombat, is enough to get it a decent score, but the fact that this has an absolutely astounding storyline tips it over the edge. The fact that the storyline even gives us a decent excuse to have the same two characters fighting each other is something quite special, and all the additional content certainly gives it a top score. Tetris on the Nintendo Game Boy, 8.5 out of 10. What's left to be said about this all-time classic? Okay, in a lot of ways it's become quite dated and a bit dull, but the reality is if you love a puzzle game, you can go back to this now and you will still not be disappointed. Hell, while I was making the review for this particular game, a game I hadn't played for absolute years, I found myself so stuck on trying to complete levels and games that I half the time forgot to start recording. This is a fantastic game and it still stands the test of time. Brilliant. But now it's time for our feature presentation and our top 10. And at number 10, it is the Nintendo 64's Mario Kart 64 with a score of 8.5 out of 10. In a lot of ways, this was where the top quality Mario Kart games really started. As much as the SNES version was the beginning, this is where it really took off. We got true 3D, we got a mixture of fantastic characters and levels that are so well designed, they're still used now in Mario Kart games under the sort of classic collection. This is a game that has not dated at all, you can still throw this in and it's fantastic fun. At number 9, it is Star Wars Battlefront 2 Celebration Edition for the PS4, also with 8.5 out of 10, and yes, that score did seem to come up a lot. Star Wars Battlefront 2, the original version of it, was kinda littered with the additional DLC and content that was required. The loot boxes, etc. really dragged it down, but when the Celebration Edition came out with all the content, it showed just how good this game really was. The fact that it took that time to get there did get in the way a bit, but when you play it now, amazing fun. Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Entertainment System, 9 out of 10. What is left to be said about this game that hasn't already been said? It's perhaps the birth of the perfect platform franchise. Nintendo, in many ways, may not even still be where it is today, if it still exists at all, without this game. It set about the biggest gaming franchise of all time, and as much as it's aged a little bit, that aging has, in a way, kind of made it even better. You can't go into a single game shop without seeing some piece of merchandise around this version of the game. It's retro gaming personified. If you're a fan of retro gaming, this is it right there. Mortal Kombat XL on the PS4, 9 out of 10. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that for me, this is the perfect Mortal Kombat game. As much as I still love many of the retro Mortal Kombat games, especially Mortal Kombat 2, I did drift out of the franchise. I just found it got a little bit samey. But when I played Mortal Kombat XL on the PS4, the special edition with all the additional content put in, I was absolutely hooked. The storyline was fantastic as well, and the fact that there were so many different ways to play this game was absolutely incredible. Whether it was the story mode or just going around the crypt unlocking content, whatever I wanted to do, there was something fun to do in this game. Grand Theft Auto 3. The version on the PS4, 9 out of 10. Although, let's throw it out there as well, I was also reviewing the original version on the PS2, but as the footage is from the PS4, that's what I'm going to say. Grand Theft Auto 3 was, in many ways, one of the most important games that was ever made. Taking this really adult-style game into 3D and exploring Liberty City, it's something that many gamers, certainly gamers of that generation, will never forget. Whilst later Grand Theft Auto games would eclipse this game in many ways, there's also a lot that they could learn from going back and looking at this game again. This was a fantastic game and certainly deserved its score. Super Mario 64 and the Nintendo 64, 9 out of 10. I consider this to be one of the greatest games of all time. As Mario games go, this to me was really where they kind of peaked in some ways. While there are better games, taking it into 3D here, it never really got better. I don't personally consider Sunshine, Galaxy, or any of the other 3D games better than this. They looked prettier, but this game was absolutely peak, and the leap between the Super Nintendo Mario games and this was astounding. The first time you turned on the Nintendo 64 and played Super Mario 64, seeing the castle, seeing Mario, God forbid seeing Bowser in that beautiful, bright, colourful 3D, it was something you'd never forget. I don't really think you can go back and play this game and appreciate what a landmark game it was. For Nintendo, this truly took their games franchise into a whole other dimension. Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, 9 out of 10 again. This game is incredible. You take 3, 4 if you include the lost levels, of the greatest platform games ever made. You improve the graphics substantially, rebuilt from the ground up graphically, and you have possibly the greatest collection of Mario games you could ever want. Super Mario Bros. On its own is a true great classic, as we've already discussed. Super Mario Bros. 3, potentially the greatest platform game ever made? I think it's up for a debate. You include the other 2 games in the package, giving you all the potential options that are in there, and the fact that it's a multiplayer as well. Graphically, it's beautiful. I don't see how anyone could have any gripes with this game. If you don't like it, the only thing I can assume is that you don't like platform games, and that's fair enough, but for anyone that likes platform games and likes to see retro gaming at its most beautiful, this right here does everything you could want. While the Nintendo Entertainment System games maybe tick that retro box slightly more, for me this was where retro gaming really hits its peak. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System and Mario sort of go hand in hand. They're perfect for each other, and as much as Mario World was fantastic, this was its best. Okay, Super Mario Bros. 3 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, 9.5 out of 10. How can I give what I even now would consider an inferior version of Super Mario Bros. 3 0.5 higher score than Super Mario All-Stars, which has a better version, including lots of other games? I suppose it's because Super Mario Bros. 3 was, for its time, such a massive leap forward, and it is still perfectly playable right now, by the way. Super Mario Bros. 3 took Mario Bros. To an entirely new level. It was fantastic. It introduced so many things that would become synonymous with Mario games going forward for years to come, and in many ways, as we've delved backwards in Mario games to a more retro feel, still are being felt today. Super Mario Bros. 3 really took the success that Super Mario Bros. Had and built it into a true franchise, something that Super Mario Bros. 2 didn't quite do. Assassin's Creed Origins on the PS4, 9.5 out of 10. I could easily argue that Assassin's Creed Origins is justifiably my favourite game of all time. I have a soft spot for ancient Egypt, I'll be honest, so that's at least a factor. But for me, I find it really hard to point out any real flaws in this game. Or at least too many, and there are so many positives. Graphically, this game is beautiful. The world you're exploring is absolutely astounding. The storyline is fantastic as well, and the characters you meet and play as within it are so captivating, so enjoyable to play as, so enjoyable to engage with. I could spend hours just wandering around in this game, travelling from place to place, exploring the world, and I don't think I could ever get bored. It's one of the most incredible games I ever played. And at number 1, it's Resident Evil, the 2002 remake for the Nintendo GameCube, getting a remarkable 10 out of 10. Is that score overkill compared to some of the other games we've seen here? You can argue that, but for the type of game it is, I don't see how the game could be improved. This is survival horror perfection. Graphically, this is absolutely stunning. It takes everything that was good about the original Resident Evil and turns it up by 100%, if not more. Graphically, this is staggering. It's so immersive, so dark and gritty. The fact that it can be this horrifying and yet truly so beautiful at the same time is so impressive. Every single character, every single monster, every room has been redesigned to a staggering level. Resident Evil 2002 is the game that made me truly fall in love with the Resident Evil franchise, something I've never grown out of. But what do you think? Any scores you'd change? Comment below and let me know if you think a game deserves to be higher up on the list. I've got some more retro reviews to make, so until next time, take the high ground.